everyone. Thanks for being here today. On Monday, the Hamilton County Board of Elections, the Republicans decided to appeal a federal court's order to count provisional ballots. Fortunately, Democrats on the Hamilton County Board of Elections stood strong and voted against this refusal to count legally cast votes. Secretary Husted now has to break the tie vote. We strongly urge the Secretary to vote no on going forward with any further appeals, clearing the way for these votes to finally be counted. Over a year ago, the Secretary voted to appeal an earlier order of the federal court to count ballots all the way to the United States Supreme Court. It was a waste of time then, and to do the same this time would create an additional long delay after voters in Ohio have already waited 14 months to have their votes counted. Secretary Husted has called for an end to confusion for voters during an important election year. Voting with the Republican board members to appeal this decision would create the very confusion he claims to want to avoid. Imagine if your vote from the 2010 election, if you can remember that far back, had not yet been counted. How would you feel? These people behind me know what that's like, and they don't want other Ohioans to have their rights in limbo. The lengths that the Republicans have gone to so far to keep from doing their job of counting votes have been astonishing. Last year, Representative Reece proposed a solution to the very problem just addressed by the court. Over a year ago, Secretary Husted called it a good start, and then did nothing to incorporate it into his suggestions to the legislature for reform. The legislature passed 2 election bills last year and did nothing to address this problem or incorporate Representative Reece's solution. Secretary Husted said that he wanted to reduce the number of provisional ballots. In fact, in his first election, the rate of casting provisional ballots increased dramatically over prior odd-year elections with similar turnouts. Secretary Husted said that electronic poll books would solve our problem with provisional ballots. In fact, the one county to use electronic poll books, Montgomery County, had unusually high rates of provisional voting this year and the highest rate of wrong precinct, right polling place rejections in the state. I don't like to single out that county because I know those election officials were searching for ways to make it better for voters. But we told Secretary Husted what needed to happen, and we were ignored. Just like Secretary Brunner told the Republicans what needed to happen and was ignored. And just like Representative Feder and other legislative Democrats told the Republicans what needed to happen 6 years ago on House Bill 3 and were ignored. They refused to listen to what the real problems are and which solutions will work. Now the court has given guidance, and Ohio can treat provisional ballots fairly this fall instead of throwing out thousands of ballots over simple mistakes. The decision from the federal court tells a story that is easy to understand. Voters showed up to the polls, poll workers sometimes made errors in directing them where to vote, and as a result, voters' ballots were wrongly rejected. Nowhere in this case was evidence presented of a mythical stubborn voter who refuses to go to the correct building or table within the correct building to vote. If that happens, it is the rare exception, and the story gets circulated until everyone starts believing that's the norm. In fact, human error is the norm. Smart people, competent people, average people, normal people, we all make mistakes. And we now have a common sense way to deal with it with this court decision. The decision says that ballots cast in the right location, but at the wrong precinct table, must be counted, because the most reasonable explanation for that is, quote, because the staff or poll worker made a mistake, end quote. We have different polling place arrangements across the state to suit different counties' needs. Some precincts don't share a polling place with any other precinct. If we throw out ballots cast in multi-precinct polling places, we'll be treating voters differently based on where they live, and that violates the equal protection of our laws. With this decision, fairer provisional ballot counting rules are now in place for the fall election. Ballots cast in the wrong precinct but right location must be counted across the state, and ballots cast in the wrong place due to poll worker error must be counted as well. Secretary Husted issued a directive with a new provisional ballot envelope, which makes it possible to capture poll worker error. It's similar, but not quite what we proposed in House Bill 76. Together with the guidance from this court, we can start to count ballots fairly. Finally, each voter deserves to know if his or her ballot was counted. Every candidate deserves to know if she won or lost her race. These games make people distrustful of their government. We regularly have elections with turnout below 50% in this country. Yet across the nation, Republicans are implementing harmful restrictions on voting, and improving turnout is not high on their priority list. In a healthy democracy, we need the people coming out and making their voices heard. And when they come out to vote, the government's job is to get them to the right place and to count their votes. Secretary Husted has said that he doesn't want voters to be confused by an HB 194 referendum campaign during an important election year. Voting with the Republican board members to appeal this court decision would create the very confusion he says he wants to avoid. We strongly urge him not to create that chaos. And next you'll hear from Representative Alicia Reece.